Lyrical name that tune. I'm trying to think about how to do this without letting you know the name of the song. Um, it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be hard for you because the line in which has the name of the song is so powerful. But tell me what you see. I hear their cries. Just say if it's too late for me. I cannot see the sky. Is this the prize for having learned how not to cry? Anybody? Is this
Doctor
the
My Eyes.
Jackson
you,
Brown. Yeah.
you got it. Jackson Brown, Doctor My Eyes, right? And I remember hearing this song way back when, because in a way, and this kind of has something to do with acceptance, like you learn how, especially when living with a disability, that's what wasn't what I was thinking about for this class. When you live with a disability, you learn to accept a whole bunch of things, right? You learn how to just go forward without, you know, and you learn how to do it without learning, without having to cry. You just kind of let it go, right? But does that end up that deadening feeling that Catherine put as resignation, like, um, uh, is that deadening, or it can be deadening, right? And is there a price to pay for all that we have to accept, for example, right? Where then you don't get to, because you have to accept so much, if you don't get to see the sky, right? In the same way. And, I don't know. I think if you're not careful about how much acceptance is like a really important, as Catherine said, spiritual attainment, and then to not do it and let it lapse into resignation, or what Peter's talking about, like how deadening is it, right? So, because what it can do is that you can end up not seeing the sky in the same way either, right? And I think I've been a little bit guilty of that in my life because I'm always ready for the next big thing to happen, then for the shoe to drop, And so, but so what I wanted to talk about, or like try to think about, one of the superpowers that I think comes with a yoga practice is you start to be able, usually you think, oh, it's about being able to do the poses and kind of attainment. And some people never get fully even past that. And there's nothing wrong with that because the poses teach you things, whether your mind knows it or not, right? But and there's a curiosity necessary for being a yoga student, which I hope and wonder and trying to get you to like explore your practice and all those things I try to, and that's all true. But one of the things that comes um, as a deep learning that for me at least, which is how to let things in, right? Which doesn't mean you have to let everything in, right? So that's part of the mastery of, or one of the gifts of a yoga practice, but you have to not let everything in carte blanche. Has anyone figured out that the world's an effed up place right now in particular? And you have to be careful what you let in, what you don't let in, right? There's a whole bunch of stuff going on. And I'm not saying about my yoga practice in relation to that. I want to say that being able to, go to what energy, when you said acceptance, what I don't like about acceptance is that if it's just psychological, I think it's deadening. I think that there's which instead of thinking about acceptance, like letting in the things you can't change without deadening, right? Like what's the state of openness that is required before you move into action, right? So what is openness as a sensation, right? Because in order to see the blue of the sky, You have to stay open, right? And how does the openness combine with action? So in a way, when I say in centering, you're opening to an energy source. You've heard that from me before, right? Like, think about the quieting. Don't just think about it of centering in terms of your mind quieting down. You're getting yourself in a state of receptivity, right? Receiving and letting in something for your mind to let in, something that was always there. The quiet part of you is always there. Whether your mind can receive it is the issue, right? So the receptive part, doing the things necessary that allow the mind to be more receptive to part of its energy, to part of the energy source available to our consciousness, is a difference. So as you sit quietly and feel your feet on the floor, you start to get some structure. Your feet on the floor, your sitting bones, because I say things to you all the time like prana, whatever that is, the flow of whatever is here, right, tends to reward structure. So when you're laying on a couch or sitting in a reclining chair and you become part of the couch, there's nothing wrong with part of the chair. There's nothing wrong with that. You kind of merge into the whole, and that's a way of um entering the flow of whatever's here, right? And sometimes that's a necessary state for your well-being, but there's also receiving what's here differently. So when you might rest on the couch, that's not the same as preparing or receiving prana for action, which is what asana is. So when I say prana rewards structure, by feeling your feet on the floor and your sitting bones, hitting down and rising up, broadening between your shoulder blades, broadening across your collarbones, right? You're preparing your structure to try to have the river that's always here, because it's even when you're in the recliner, right? But to actually get it in within crisper boundaries. Because when it's within slightly crisper boundaries, that your breath can actually join it and amplify it better. That's why in pranayama, you typically want to have a surrendered spine if you're doing it lying down, but you want your chest open, you want some structure, right? Or you're in sitting pranayama where your rib cage and spine is extra alert. When you lay really comfortable on your recliner, there's a very good chance that your breath continues to get shallow. There's nothing wrong with that. But a super relaxed, without structure position doesn't utilize your breath in the same way. So as you're sitting in structure, creating boundary for whatever the flow that's already here, then you start to breathe with it within the structure. That's part of, I think, particularly what Bika Sengar emphasized as some of the structure and positions necessary to utilize your breath at the deepest levels. So for a second here, rather than just centering like you're getting in a recliner, you're using the structure, but trying to not just strain to be in the structure. This is why practice matters so much. Remember, we're trying to receive something in centering. Trying to be aware of more of the totality while maintaining your structure. Feet on the floor, sitting bones, lift in the chest, breath into each nostril, into each lung, awareness in each sitting bone, awareness of the bottom of each feet. foot. Remember, mind follows receptive consciousness more than it follows breath. So be in your body as structure to utilize the flow of prana more directly. Lips together, teeth slightly apart. Becoming the empty vessel for the river to flow through, but with alertness, not shavasana. Good, and then release. Now you're going to add some more structure. Lift the sternum up more with more fire. Drop the chin down when in surrender so you can receive with humility, right? So your structure receives. Remember, asana, one of the things it teaches you is how to receive and honor. Good. And then raise your head up with closed eyes and open your eyes. So I kind of get, so if one of the deep functions of yoga, all 8 limbs, is to receive more directly the flow of the universe. So I know that sounds barfy, but what if it's literally true, right? That's the underlying aim of asana, is to receive more directly the flow of the universe, right? I can kind of get why. I mean, they say if you had to pick one limb, which you should never have to pick one limb, you'd probably pick meditation, right? Well, right, pranayama comes with that, but like you'd probably try to get it as stripped down and pure and directly drinking from the fire hose of existence, right? Without freaking out, letting it run right through you. So I kind of get how meditation might be the right. But I love asana because you're trying to figure out how to take the direct flow, receive it, and then put it into action, knowing that you're going to F up. You're not going to do it purely, right? It's okay. That's not your fault, right? Right. So when this idea of getting it's got a really deep focus to it to receive the core of it, but then you got to figure out how to move with it. And so part of, as you know, in each class, I want you to lighten. And Michael was already doing this. He was already moving around. He was like already going, oh my God, there's been too many words, for God's sakes. I got to keep moving. It's like, yeah, I get it. Because actually, the lighter, open part without the intense focus is part of receiving the totality of the energy that's here, right? You need both. Remember, concentration, focus is one of the limbs. What your focus is, focusing doesn't mean narrowing. It probably means widening without judgment, right? What's the Sanskrit word, Bethany, for the limb that's concentration or
Dar-
focus? Was it?
Dharana.
Say it again.
Dharana.
Yeah, it's supposed to be cooler because it's in a different sounding tone, right? So yes, that one, right? So we're making sure the lighter part comes with our focus. So that doesn't mean you're not narrowing too. You're actually keeping the lighter part, the more open part, with the focused part, right? And remember, the focus that you need to read a book is not probably the focus you want Dharana, right? Say it again.
Dharana.
Dharana. Is
It's
the
pronounced the
Dharana is not the same as the focus you want for a book, right? When you're reading a book, it's not the focus you get when you furrow your brow and think hard. That's not the focus. Dharana probably has a wider focus. It has to have an openness to it. When you focus to read a book, that's you focusing to read the book. By the way, the universe is already in focus, right? It actually knows what it's doing, right? It's whether you can receive it all, right? So I'm getting my chest open, thinking, I want to receive the purity of the universe as a fire hose that maybe comes most undisturbed in meditation. And you're trying to figure out how to be a conduit for it. But I'm trying to figure out how to apply it to action, which is part of why I love asana. Right. So now I'm bringing my legs back together because I don't know if you had your legs what I did. Right. Because I like to feel open at the base of my spine too. I'm going to lift up and get that extra bounce and lightness in my spine because as soon as I sit back, I know I'm going to compress in my lower back, which means my sensation is going to dull a little bit, right? So my mind has to stay open to the lightness that I just got from moving around and take all of that and bring it back into, because remember, focus, when it's more mental, like to read a book, is a compression of stimulus. So a pure observer in yoga would actually be what focus is. Pure observer in yoga would be wide open. And yet your movements in an asana are like reading a book, are focusing it down into movement, but you have to have the whole universe come into the movement. You have to stay open and be focused. Right? All right. So of course, I like to start off every practice after I open. I'm going to bring some more focus. Downward facing dog. Do your version of downward facing dog. Right? But I'm trying to stay open, which gets to our question of acceptance, right? Can I stay open to the expanse of the universe while I'm focusing in asana, where I'm narrowing down in asana? So I'm pressing down through the index mound. I'm putting more weight on the thumb side. I'm lengthening my bicep. I'm lifting my sternum. I'm dropping my head. I'm brought in between my shoulder blades. I'm heading down through my sitting bones, and I'm making sure I'm going down my inner midline down to my heels. I'm going to keep lengthening my spine, right? But what's hard about what we have to do in a sitting downward facing dog is that we tend to lift up to the top of our head, but make sure you're simultaneously hitting down through your sitting bones, because that's the way gravity would move you if you're in a more traditional pose. What? You have to do all that and you have to think it's possible? Guess what? Your mind can't do that alone. You have to practice this enough to move in multiple directions through exactly the same space. Good, and then release. Do you hear what I just said? Right? In downward facing dog, your hands are here, right? Bethany, will you pull up a picture of downward facing dog from something? Right? Your hands are over here, your feet are over here. You're drawing energy out of the earth skyward. You're grounding it this way, right? But a lot of the movement through your spine is going up towards diagonally towards the sky. When you're in a seated, right? The equivalent with that would be hitting down through your sitting bones, right? But if you just compress in this position, it's not going to work. You have to lengthen your spine. So you're hitting down through your sitting bones, opening and extending, using your arms to open and extend. So there's downward facing dog, right? My point is that if you go from our hands See, I don't like that. That's not a great version of downward facing dog, just so you know. There's a whole bunch of reasons why I don't like that pose. And I can tell she's hasn't studied the pose directly. She's more of, and I don't mean this judgmentally, but in terms of an individual pose, that's a vinyasa practitioner in downward facing dog, right? Because there you can see how strong her upper arms are. I'm pointing to her shoulders right now. You can kind of see what's happening there, and it's a good pose because she's going to step through and be really strong with her arms, right? But so you don't get what I'm talking about as much, but there's a flow that goes along her spine all the way up skyward towards the, she's finding, you got shamed into a different pose, finding a different pose, right? Right. And I don't mean shame. I'm just telling you what I'm trying to get across, right? Is that there's an energy that goes this way, got to go through the spine. It's grounded this way. So, but for us in a chair, you're actually trying to draw in order to go up from the head down to the tailbone, like what her pose was, we have to go down into the chair seat. But to do that, we have to extend this way, which is not a direction that's happening in a traditional downward facing dog. So it's confusing. So your mind goes, I don't even know what the hell Matt's saying. See, that's a little bit better, right? Because you can see how the way the pitch is taken, you get more focus on his legs here, but think about there's a lot of important energy coming from his hands up along the spine, and it's being grounded by his legs, right? So imagine there's growth that way, but you and I have to hit down into our chair seat to get that energy to go skyward, right? But the only way we can do that is if we're also extending out the top of our head, right? So we have to focus on extending out through the top of our head to hit ground, to hit down through the sitting bone. And that does not make sense for your mind, correct? How do you do that? How do you go in simultaneous direction at once? Is anybody with me here? Or have I lost myself into the ether, right? I don't mind. I just twirled myself into the ether, right? Back to downward facing dog. You and I have an impossible task for our mind, right? We're going to go through in multiple directions through the same space. But Tadasana has already taught you how to do this. So I'm asking you to receive the multidimensionality of prana without it having to go through your mind first. Okay, so your hands are on the table. You're trying to get the action of pressing down to the inside of your hand, the forearm up towards the ceiling that lifts your chest. I want you to hit down through your sitting bones, extend your spine this way to go this way down through your sitting bones again. And once you are extending and lengthening your spine upward, go down through your sitting bones. And when you hit it at that level, can anyone feel their legs light up a little bit? That's downward facing dog. That's the balance between the arms and the legs. Now breathe into that multi-directionality that's happening in your body. Feed the flame with oxygen. Good, and then release. There's no such thing as a one-way street in yoga. And how do I receive the universe? See, I got my voice really strong. Like I was trying to get your focus narrowed, right? Like it's a willful thing, but you actually, to receive it going in multiple directions, you have to stay open even while you're focusing, right? Focus, dharana, doesn't mean narrowing. It means narrowing while remaining open. Inhale, take your arms wide. Again, your mind's attention will go to the what it is to hold your upper arms up. Or if you're only here, or if you're, your arms at your sides, I don't really care. You can do it at your sides. If it's too hard to hold your arms up, right? Right. But you're trying to figure out a way to do this. Draw the shoulder blade black, go beyond the fingertips, draw your bicep back towards your tricep out towards your pinky, bicep towards your face. You're doing all that. And your mind at first will focus on your arms, but you're doing all that to feel your sitting bones more. and to feel your feet more. You have to be and then release. You have to be the observer that receives, even while you're acting with focus, right? So to receive the consequence of an action is why asana is a limb, because it shows you how to go into the world, but you have to receive what the fullness of the action actually unveils. So again, wide. We're doing this work in the arms to actually feel our sitting bones in our feet, right? Even if you're here, find a way to make, so everyone do it like this, do it whatever more at your sides, right? So now go out through, extend beyond your elbow tips, but don't just do that from your elbow tips, do that by feeling more connected between your shoulder blades. Do that to feel your sitting bones more and your feet more. Inhale. And on an exhalation, if you can, take your arms wide. And then take your arms down, right? Again, you have the action happening and the receiver hearing the consequence, right? You have to allow the fullness of experience, even while you're having to narrow the universe, right? All right. So now take your legs wide again. Remember, we're still at making sure, even though you have to stay vigilant with not letting too much of the world in, you're practicing how to receive what's underneath, right? All right, so we're gonna go off to the side like we always do. And I know that I want to keep grounding down, so I'm pushing as I lean one direction, right? I'm pushing on my back hip like I always do. I got my forearm here. I'm trying to get my spine to lift, but I'm lifting this way, but keeping my overall awareness on trying to have it notice energy go down to my feet. So even though I go this way, I'm looking for a foof that way, right? And I can't make that foof happen. I have to receive it. I have to notice the totality of the experience. I'm not going to notice the totality of my experience with my will. I'm going to do actions with my will, right? The totality comes from a different place, right? Again, I'm going this way. I'm changing gravity. I'm pressing down through my back hip. I'm lengthening my spine. Not my mind wants to follow the drama. I'm trying to stay behind my eyes, stay deeper to watch what the cascading energy that happens down through to my feet. And then I want to the totality, I'm going to take a breath and try to feed both. And then come on back. Thumb up if you're following what I'm saying a little bit. Okay. All these things we do over and over, like don't ever get bored by repetition. Repetition is an invitation to go deeper, right? If your mind can stay open, right? So you can keep seeing the blueness of the sky, right? So now we're going to add something. We're going to go over, do the same thing, press down, have the spine go up, notice the down. Now we're going to try to see that sense of direction where you're actually getting your legs filled, right? And we're going to try to like then make that downward action slightly more willful. So, which is hard. Like, so you're trying to like imperfectly use your will to follow the flow of what you're actually receiving, right? It's all crazy hard when to your mind, it's very hard. So you're gonna go this way, you're gonna press down, you're gonna raise your spine up. What's great for me is that as soon as I do that, I can feel the relief go down to my legs, right? So I want that. Now I'm going to try to keep that direction, that more totality of what's happening, right? I'm going to keep going this way, and I'm going to push down through my sitting bones to my feet, right? I'm going to try to add my will in service to what I'm already receiving. And I'm breathing a few times, right? I'm making sure my spine is getting lit by the breath hitting into my rib cage. Good, and then release. Adding your will to what's already happening is an art. Adding your will to the flow of prana is an art. It takes practice. I'm moving around because I got really deep into that side. So I got to kind of make sure I stay light here, right? Because I got really focused on what I was trying to do. And I limited the universe again. I'm not practicing Dharana as well. All right, so I'm going to go over. I'm going to have all this stuff happen. I'm going to push down and get my base right. I'm going to lift up this way, feeling the consequence, observing the consequence more from the back of my eyes, right? See the totality of the direction, receive it. Then I'm going to keep lifting this way, and I'm going to push my will to follow the backside of the pose. But I want to do it in a way that's seamless, that doesn't interrupt the totality of the experience. My will is training itself to be part of the world, as opposed to be a violent actor onto the world. Good, and then release. Just turns out in an asana, you get to practice inside your own body. So I was just writing a section of my book. I might have read about it last week. We're gonna do that again in a second. We're gonna go back to dog pose. Go back to your, is that you get to work on existential issues in your own body. So right now we're trying to figure out how to seamlessly get our will to integrate with the totality of experience. Try to teach the will to act in the flow of prana without destroying, without causing violence in the prana. And we're just working on a yoga pose, right? And the yoga pose has the entire ocean in a drop, right? So hands back on the table or your dog pose on your thighs. You're going to revisit a simpler version, downward facing dog, where you're going to go and remember to, work your arms and toward the muscle, towards the bone. So you feel the totality, your chest lifts. You extend your spine skyward through the top of your head to hit downward. And once you hit downward through your sitting bones down to your legs, you go back to going skyward. You broaden across the collarbones. You intersect horizontal and vertical. Oh my God, if your mind tries to keep up with all these instructions, you're going to bum out. Go back to your practice. Go back to what you know. And recognize that all this was already happening. Notice the rhythm of your rib cage expanding energy into your spine. Keep that lengthening your spine. All this is already happening. It's whether you can follow it without interrupting, if you can enter the flow of the pose. Good, and then release. I'm going to come forward. You can do this on your knees. I'm going to come forward and actually kind of be grateful that the universe keeps staying open and I keep being allowed to swim into the fullness of what's actually happening. But I'm going to now make sure, no, I'm not just doing this to pray. I'm doing this to get a different kind of base. I'm feeling my elbow. You can feel it on your thighs. The elbows on the table, hands together. Broaden across my sacrum. Extend down the inner groin to the inner knee to the inner heel. Right? Broaden across the collarbones. And suddenly I'm back to trying to have my actions be part of the flow of what was already happening. Don't fall in love with your actions. fall in love with the vastness that it opens. In order to see the vastness, you got to keep receiving from behind your eyes, even while you're focusing on the particular actions of the pose. Good, and then release. I know for a fact, having read and actually met Jackson Brown a couple of times because he lived in Santa Barbara when I was in graduate school. Not to where I talked to him very long, but I know that he was a serious activist, right? Especially an environmental activist. And he spent a lot of his younger life being pissed at the world, right? He wrote that song about being pissed at the world, right? Like he's worried that he got so into the activism, he forgot to see the blue of the sky, right? So he's writing that song in in the story I'm telling myself to go, wait, there's a price to be paid if I'm trying too hard. I forget to receive while I'm actually trying to change the world, right? This is also part of what happens in a yoga pose. Is you're trying to get better at the yoga pose, you got to keep receiving the whole time. And it's not just blue sky, by the way. In poses, things are dark too, right? All right. Inhale, take your arm up. Exhale, come across your body, take your arm behind you, right? So again, I'm trying to figure out a greeting for the newsletter, and the theme is called Sowing the Seeds of Good, right? But I'm going to take a different take on it. Like, in order for me to try to aspire in this pose, inhale, lift up, exhale, revolve, I've got to take my desire to go too far, to prove myself. I didn't want to be able to focus on doing the pose, drop the shoulder blades, drop the shoulder, spread between the shoulder blades, sit down through your base, stretch up to the top of your head, inhale, lift up, exhale, revolve. All that stuff is going on. And I need to deal with myself trying to aspire farther into the pose without creating violence. Good, and then come on back to center. All these things being worked out in the context of your own practice before you export it onto the world. It's part of why I work on existential issues in my own body, so I don't export violence into the world, right? I figure out what it means, because the good thing is when I do it in my body, I'm the only one that gets hurt if I overdo it. Inhale, lift up, exhale, revolve. I learned how to make my mistakes in a context that's smaller, so I don't have to hurt other people, right? In order to learn. So again, I've got to hit down, rise up, broaden, open, use my will, what I know about the poses, but no, I'm becoming even in a twist, you're part of the whole universe. You still have your midline. By squeezing your spine, you open parts of the universe. By twirling your spine, you're opening to more vastness. You're still doing your actions. You're still hitting down through your sitting bones, down through your legs. You're rising up. You're using your will. And the twist is opening you to a different perspective on the vastness. And more of it's getting cleansed. The energy in your spine is getting cleansed. Good, and then come on back to center. Turns out the cleansing energy in your spine is really good. Right, I'm moving around so I get lightness in my spine. Right? Because the fact that when I've been trying too hard and working too hard, not just in yoga poses, it actually makes me feel grief that I've not been honoring the whole universe when I move and stuff. Back to this position, right? So twists help grief, right? Only if you go back to being open again. Only if the openness is getting cleansed by the twist, right? And if I'm trying to go too far in the twist, I'm not staying open. I want to make sure that in any willful action I'm receiving, which means my actions and my acceptance or my receiving have to be simultaneous. So I'm getting quiet in this position to do a twist again, to appreciate what I'm attempting. Good, and then we're going to do a twist again. I'm going to bring lightness with me into this twist, because once I start squeezing, using my will, I'm going to like think I'm more in charge than I am, right? Doesn't mean I'm not in charge, right? So I'm getting light again, right? And then I'm going to ground and let the compression of sitting in with my spine getting compressed, because I can't stop that. I have to accept that I don't have the abdominal strength to keep my spine completely physically alert. So I'm taking this moment, I'm softening my jaw, the inside of my mouth, and I know I'm about to use my will. Inhale, lift up. Turn the tricep into the midline to feel the flow going through your spine. Exhale, go across. Find the grounding to let the world open again to your mind, right? Because if you get too willful, you'll close off the world. So now I'm getting my other hand to get where I'm really on balance before I start using my will. I don't want to limit the world with my will. So I'm getting grounded. I'm going to stay open, lift under my collarbones, open my back body too. I'm going to inhale, hit down through my sitting bones, exhale, and start to revolve. But I'm revolving empty space, not just my physical body. Inhale, lift up, exhale, revolve. I'm going to remind myself of how big the universe is by broadening across my collarbones, hitting down with my shoulder blades, down to my feet, down to my sitting bones, down to my feet, because the universe is big, even though my will is acting. Inhale, lift up, exhale, revolve. I'm going a little farther. I'm thinking, can I go farther, or do I lose the universe when I go farther? I don't know. My mind doesn't really know. So I'm going to sit here for a while and try to just open in the strain. Good, and then release. Learning how to open in the strain in the will of a pose is actually one of the things that you learn how to do as your poses refine. So I got pretty intense again there again. So I'm making sure I don't stay just in the collapsed world of my will. So I got lighter. I'm inhaling, I'm going up again. I'm exhale going across. I'm trying to now, already my mind wants to go, ooh, 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 I want to get there, I want to get there. But I'm going to figure out how to make sure I stay balanced. I'm finding the position where I'm most alert and prepared to engage, but I stay open. Like right now on this side, I can tell I need to feel my skin. That'll keep intelligence in my pose, right? I know these tricks, right? Inhale, expand to the openness, exhale, revolve. But as I revolve with my will, I want to stay open to the bottoms of my feet, open to my sitting bones. It's going to help if I stay connected to my midline. Inhale, lift up, exhale, revolve. What I need on this side is different than what I need on the other side. My other side thwarts me more. This side goes farther. So I have a different set of safeguards I need depending on the side that I'm twisting into. Find what it is for you. My will is not the victor. My will is meant to open fields of vastness. So I get to receive. Good, and then release. I want my empty spaces getting cleansed by the revolving of my spine. This time I'm going to come back to this position, but for a different reason. I'm not going to go inward. I'm going to go more. I'm going to hit my elbows down and lengthen my tricep and open my palms. So I'm lengthening the underside of my arms, hitting down through the bone and opening my palms to open my back body. What? What the hell? I'm going to try that again. Now you know where I'm going, right? I'm trying to create a base. I want you, as you start to open, I want you to open your back body, right? So now I'm hitting down. I'm lengthening. I'm dropping my shoulder blades, lengthening down to my elbow from the back side of my arm. Notice how that engages the muscles underneath your collarbones, right? And now I'm going to open my palms, open across my back body, and open across my sacrum as I open my palms. And lo and behold, energy goes down to my legs. What the hell is going on? I love this shit. Good. And then release. Does anyone have shit open all over the place? So that openness was always there. It's whether I can use my will while receiving the openness and not just have that be an intellectual idea. Hmm. Hmm. Strength and openness. It's an interesting integration. One more time better. Softer, not as much will. So it helps me when I feel my skin now more. It lets me use my breath better. And even though I have structure, I'm a little bit closer to Shavasana. Then I'm bringing my hands together. Now the triangle between my elbows and my hands becomes the triangle between my sitting bones, my elbows and my hands. Sitting bones, my elbows, my hands, my back body, my spine's coming home, bottoms of my feet. Prana follows consciousness, and then the breath feeds it. So as I have this more structure, I inhale and exhale, and I know I'm heading towards relaxation. So being barfy, feel grateful for the opportunity to practice the totality in a focused asana. Good, and then come on back. So now you're gonna go back into your chair and feel your feet, your sitting bones. I got my hand, my elbows on the armrest. I'm creating a passive structure, trying to make sure the space stay open so I can allow the support of the chair, receive the support that's been there the entire class. The entire class, your chair has been holding you up. I'm going to let that wash over me, through me. Lips together, teeth slightly apart. In Shavasana, you're kind of like a feather that's kind of floating on the wind. Feel your breath. Don't change it. Thank your body. It is the vehicle that houses your realization. Thank it again. It allows you to practice, make mistakes, all the while sustaining. Thank it again. Start to bring yourself back. Slightly deeper inhalation, slightly longer exhalation. There's an inside and an out. When you come back out of Shavasana, you get to appreciate the distance between the two. And it's distance that no one experiences but you. Not in the way you do. And your experience will change. Sometimes you can pop out of Shavasana, sometimes you can't. All right, so one of the possible themes you could take out of this class is that don't let your willful action narrow the world. In order to receive it, you have to somehow get your will congruent with prana, because the prana is already happening. Now, what's weird is there's a flip side of this that hasn't even been exactly said, or even it's energetically connected. Don't let your acceptance be willful, because it'll narrow the world. Right? And I know that a lot of my acceptance in my life has had to be willful. And at times I've lost track of the sky. Right? Sometimes, and most of you have been probably better at this at your life than me, you better cry. Because it's the price, what the Jackson Brown says that is the price I pay for learning how not to cry. Right? It's both. Right? All right, everybody. Asana teaches a lot. Namaste. Spirit in me bows the spirit in you.